Hi, we're going to start chapter 7, which is about managing entrepreneurs and ventures. And some of you may be looking at starting your own business and entrepreneurship and may have more of an interest in this chapter than others. So, entrepreneurship is basically starting a business that could fill a need. You maybe lost a job, unfortunately, and you need to start your own business to survive. Or maybe you had an experience, and with that experience, you're like, ha, I have an idea that could solve a problem. So, entrepreneurship grows out of ideas. And really, all it takes is one great idea and you can get yourself off the ground. Now, many people who are entrepreneurs start businesses or have ideas, and sometimes they just don't happen, but it just takes one. Once you get that one, it works for you. Entrepreneurship is easy, but it's also risky. It's easy because you could start a business with your computer if you wanted to. For example, back in the day, um, before laptops were very common, when I was an undergraduate, people who had word processors and these large computers, they started their own business of typing papers for individuals. And I remember my capstone paper was 50 pages, and I paid someone $50, $1 a page to type my paper for me. And forever grateful, best $50 I spent. But that person was an entrepreneur. She was starting a business and she filled a gap. But it is risky because you can invest a lot of money into equipment and that business doesn't happen. I know people who've tried to start businesses and they go out buy printers, they buy the computers, they buy the equipment they need, and unfortunately, it didn't happen. So it is pretty risky. So why is it important? Well, for one thing, small business is the backbone of the U.S. economy. Ideas generate from that. You see the point of innovation in the screen, but the idea of ideas that could not be developed in larger organizations because of politics, because of money, because of whatever reason, it could happen in a small business. And small businesses do create jobs. And the only issue, and we'll talk about this a little bit, is that it's hard for small businesses to keep their employees, but it does create jobs. So we have a social entrepreneur idea, and what that is basically try to improve society. It could be through, let's say, for example, smaller solar panels. So instead of these larger solar panels, maybe you create smaller ones. I know that could be something, or maybe a water purifying system, or something to clean water. So that would be something that would be more sustainable that could help society. Now, in regards to sources of opportunity, well, we talked earlier about, the filling the need you experience, the unexpected, you lose your job, the process need, perhaps you are on a sports team, you're like, ha, this piece of training equipment would work wonders. So you invent your own. Demographics, things have changed. People are getting older, so maybe you can come up with an idea that might suit an older population. So there's so many different ideas and so many different ways that you can approach entrepreneurship. And so you can see these in just these 7 alone. So for funding opportunities, I think the one that we're kind of most familiar with is a venture capitalist, and those are companies that will take what they believe is a good idea and invest money in that person to grow the company. Now, of course, they get part of the profit with that, and so we need to be careful how much we're giving up and how much freedom we're giving up with this job or this business. Um, Financial institutions, you could write a plan. We're going to talk about business plans in a bit and try to get a loan from a bank. The one thing that I do not want you to do, and please promise me you won't do this, is to use your own personal credit card to finance a business. Now, if it's just a printer, if it's something that you might use beyond the business, okay, we could talk a little bit. But if you're trying to buy a large piece of equipment, you don't want to use your credit card. You don't want to mortgage your house. In my subdivision, there was a family down the road. They opened up a restaurant. Now the life expectancy of restaurants very good, not very long, and they put their house up for collateral for the loan. The restaurant went out, they got foreclosed, and away they went. It was a husband, wife, and 4 kids. It was very sad to see. So be very careful. And you may have a great idea and you may have the funding. Be patient. That idea can wait. Hopefully somebody else didn't think of it. IPOs, if you're a larger company, you can issue stock in order to get people to invest in you. So you have shareholders, and then you would give part of your dividends or profits back to the shareholders. And we're going to talk about that when we talk about C corporations. All right, so business plan. We talked about this in the last slide. If you want to go to a bank and you want to try to get money from a bank or even from a venture capitalist, you will have to have a business plan. And what that business plan is about is what the business is, how you plan to run it, what's your profitability scale, when you think you're going to turn a profit. Everything is going to be in this business plan, and they are going to turn you inside out. They being the banks and the venture capitalists, and it's going to be intrusive and invasive, but if you want to get this business started, you're going to have to go through it. And this has to be very, very thorough. If not, chances are you're going to waste the bank's time or the venture capitalist time and say, okay, thanks, but no thanks. A vision. We've talked before about what a vision is. A vision is a desired future state. And we can see this, what they want the organization to become. Do they want to stay small? Do they want to grow? Do they want to be sold? What is the vision of the organization? And that's going to be one of our key words. It's going to be vision. And this vision is something that we have to make sure that we know what we want before we start. Now, there's other forms of organization. The sole proprietorship, you're on your own. All right. So you are taking the risk. You're putting up all the money, but you're also putting up the liability as well. And so we're going to make that our second keyword, sole proprietorship. And then you take a look down, general partnership. We get a group of people together, and each one of those will share in the liability. It could be percentage. If someone puts 80% in, they get 80% liability, but they also get 8% of the profit. So it's a risk reward thing. C corporation. C corporation is where the owners do not have liability, the owners or shareholders. However, this entity is taxed twice. They're taxed for their profits, and they're taxed for the money that they give to the shareholders in terms of dividend. So it'd be capital gains for the dividend. So in C corporations, these are taxed twice. S corporation is a special filing you can do with the IRS, and where it's only being taxed once. And in the LLC, limited liability corporation, if you are starting a business, I strongly recommend this is what you do. You get the LLC. What it does is it incorporates your business and it takes away the liability that you would have in a sole proprietorship. Very, very, very smart idea. You need to do that. All right. So then as we work toward HR issues, one of the things that I wanted to talk about, or I talked about earlier, was trying to employ employees. Smaller businesses can't pay. Now they're learning, people come in from a small business, they're learning something that might be state of the art because larger businesses just don't have the flexibility. And so they gain this knowledge and they can move on to a larger business who can pay them more money and pay them better benefits than a smaller business. So employee retention is a little bit challenging. Employee recruitment is a little bit harder too, because being a small business, chances are there's not that much room to go further. So our third key word for this chapter is going to be recruitment, because recruiting individuals, even fresh graduates out of college, could be a challenge, because you look at a small business like, hey, yes, I can learn something, but I want something a little bit more. And unfortunately, that's the way it is. That's one of the huge challenges for a small business. Now, I haven't worked personally in a small business. I know quite a few small business owners, and a lot of them are just 1-2 people, and they just don't have the money to hire. But in other organizations that I worked that have hired for entrepreneurships, that have hired people, they have a rough time keeping them, simply because of the next step in those people's careers. Okay, so hope you enjoyed the discussion. And as always, have any questions on the material, the assignments, whatever, life in general, reach out to me and I'm happy to talk to you. Have a terrific day, guys, and I will see you later.